Welcome to Cinematic History Studio. In 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt took office, expanding the role of government in an effort to rescue a nation in crisis. Through the New Deal, the government launched programs to provide relief, rebuild the economy, and reform the financial system. Although relief programs expanded, discrimination meant help wasn't equal, leaving many black families behind. As inequality persisted, economic hardship became political, reshaping alliances and expectations of government. As war across ocean loomed, factories roared back to life. Mobilization revived the economy and pulled America toward global conflict. Haunted by the scars of war and shaped by loss, America turned inward. Hope and distance might preserve peace and spare the nation another catastrophe. Determined to avoid another war, the United States chose isolation, closing itself off from a world growing more dangerous by the day. While America remained focused at home, fascist regimes consolidated power in Europe and Asia, pushing the world closer to war. While avoiding direct involvement, America quietly prepared, increasing military production and supporting its allies. On December 7, 1941, Japanese forces launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, killing thousands and forcing the United States into World War II. Within days of Pearl Harbor, Congress declared war, and the United States committed itself fully to a global conflict. Factories that once made cars and appliances were transformed into engines of war, producing tanks, planes, and ships at unprecedented speed. At home, Americans rationed food and fuel, collected scrap metal, and reshaped daily life for the war effort. With millions of men deployed overseas, women entered factories and shipyards, permanently changing expectations of work and independence. By 1942, the war touched every corner of American life, uniting the nation in a shared effort unlike anything before. After Pearl Harbor, Black Americans enlisted in record numbers, determined to defend a nation that still denied them full equality. American newspapers launched the Double V campaign, calling for victory over fascism overseas and racism at home. Despite their service, black soldiers faced segregation, limited roles, and discrimination throughout the military. Trained in Tuskegee, Alabama, a unit of African-American pilots overcame segregation in Dow to become one of the most respected fighter units of the war. After fighting for freedom abroad, black veterans returned home, unwilling to accept second-class citizenship. When the war ended, celebrations swept the nation, carrying hopes that sacrifice had finally brought lasting change. As soldiers returned home, many black veterans found that the freedoms they defended abroad were still denied to them at home. Programs meant to reward service often excluded black veterans, reinforcing inequality even after victory. The end of the war did not end racism. Around the United States, demands for equality were met with violence and backlash. Having fought for freedom abroad, and he resolved to hold at home, the belief that equality could no longer be postponed. Pressure for change reached Washington. For the first time in decades, the federal government began to confront racial inequality. In 1948, President Truman ordered the desegregation of the armed forces, signaling that segregation could be challenged by law. In 1954, the Supreme Court ruled that segregated schools were unconstitutional, striking at the legal foundation of Jim Crow laws. The ruling was met with fierce resistance, but families and students pressed forward, risking everything to claim equal rights. Across the nation, ordinary people organized, protested, and refused to wait any longer, giving rise to a movement that would reshape America. In 1955, the killing of Emmett Till drew national attention to racial violence in the United States, forcing the country to confront realities long ignored. Later that year, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, turning a quiet act of dignity into a public stand. Black residents in Montgomery organized a year-long boycott, proving that collective discipline could challenge segregation. From the movement emerged a young minister, Martin Luther King Jr., whose words gave voice to a growing demand for justice. Through organization, discipline, and nonviolence, a local protest became a national movement, igniting a struggle that would reshape America. In 1961, activists boarded buses across the South, testing federal rulings that banned segregation in interstate travel. Nonviolent protesters were beaten and attacked, revealing how violently segregation would defend itself. In Birmingham, one of America's most segregated cities, activists confronted a system determined to maintain control. Images of children attacked by police dogs and fire hoses spread across the nation, shocking audiences at home and abroad. As public pressure mounted, the federal government was forced to confront a crisis it could no longer ignore. By 1963, civil rights activism had spread nationwide, drawing together movements from across the country. In August 1963, hundreds of thousands gathered in Washington, demanding jobs, freedom, and equal rights. From the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Martin Luther King Jr. articulated a vision of equality that echoed across America. In Selma, peaceful marchers demanding the right to vote were met with violence on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Public outrage forced action. In 1965, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act, protecting the right to vote nationwide. In 1965, new laws promised equal rights and access to the ballot. But for many Americans, daily life remained unchanged. In Los Angeles, long-standing frustration over policing, poverty, and discrimination erupted into days of unrest in the Watts neighborhood. Despite new laws, poverty, segregation, and limited opportunity continued to shape life in many American cities. As inequality persisted, activists began to debate their next steps, questioning whether nonviolence alone could still bring lasting change. By the late 1960s, the movement faced a crossroads, united by the same goals, but divided over how best to achieve them. A sharper message gained ground, one centered on pride, power, and self-defense. Voices like Malcolm X challenged gradualism, calling for self-determination and dignity. Groups like the Black Panther Party combined community programs with a demand for protection and power. Art, fashion, and language reflected a growing assertion of Black identity. Civil rights transformed into broader struggles for power, culture, and autonomy. Historic legislation secured new rights on paper, marking a major victory for the movement. With voting rights protected, millions registered and began shaping the future through the ballot. New opportunities opened in schools, workplaces, and neighborhoods, long closed to Black Americans. For the first time, Black Americans gained representation at every level of government. Through struggle and sacrifice, the nation changed. New rights were secured, new voices were heard, and the foundations of American democracy grew stronger. As old divisions faded, the world began to shift, and America stepped into a new era shaped by change, connection, and possibility. New technologies connected the world almost overnight, transforming how people lived, worked, and communicated. As trade and technology expanded, borders blurred, linking markets, labor, and lives across the globe. Economic growth brought new wealth and opportunity, but also instability, job insecurity, and widening uncertainty for many Americans. As the century closed, change moved faster than ever. Technology, travel, and communication reshaping life at a pace no generation had seen before.